There is someone in your life right now who never raises their voice, who never brags about what they've done, who never tells you what they're thinking. And you've probably made one of the biggest mistakes you'll ever make with that person. You've underestimated them. Maybe they sit in the back of meetings and say nothing. Maybe they smile and nod when you talk. Maybe they let you win arguments without ever putting up a fight. And you, like most people, have quietly filed them under harmless, under passive, maybe even under weak. But here's what no one tells you. Silence is not weakness. Silence is not emptiness. Silence is not the absence of power. Silence, when it belongs to the right person, is the most dangerous weapon on earth. And today, we're going to talk about exactly why. We're going to break down 10 reasons, 10 deep, psychological, battle-tested reasons why the quietest people in any room are almost always the most dangerous ones in it. This isn't motivational fluff. This isn't surface-level self-help. This is a deep dive into the psychology of silence, into the minds of the people who say very little, yet control everything around them. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you're going to look at every quiet person you know with completely different eyes. Let's begin. Before we get into the list, I want to set the stage. I want you to understand something about the world we live in. We live in a loud world, louder than it has ever been in human history. Social media rewards the loudest voices, the biggest personalities, the ones who post every thought, every meal, every opinion. The culture we exist in today glorifies noise. We admire people who speak confidently and often. We associate volume with authority. We associate words with intelligence. But think about history for a moment. Think about the greatest strategists who ever lived, the ones who built empires, changed systems, moved chess pieces on boards that others couldn't even see. Abraham Lincoln was famously quiet in crowds. He was known to sit in rooms for hours, listening, saying almost nothing, then deliver a single statement that changed the direction of an entire nation. Albert Einstein was so introverted and quiet that his professors thought he was slow. He graduated without distinction. He worked a quiet job at a patent office. And from that silence, from that stillness, he rewired humanity's understanding of the universe. Warren Buffett, one of the richest men alive, is known for saying very little. He listens far more than he speaks. He reads for hours in silence every single day. And quietly, without fanfare, he has built one of the most extraordinary financial empires in history. Silence is not a bug, it's a feature. In the most powerful people on earth, silence is a deliberate, refined, extraordinary tool. So let's talk about why. Here are 10 reasons why silent people are dangerous. Reason 1, they are always watching. Let me paint a picture for you. You walk into a room, a party, a meeting, a social gathering, you start talking. You start performing, really, because that's what most of us do in social situations. We perform. We try to be interesting, witty, engaging. We talk about ourselves. We fill silence with words because silence feels uncomfortable. And in the corner of that room, there is a quiet person. They're not performing. They are watching. They are cataloging everything. Who speaks first? Who defers to whom? Who laughs nervously? Who dominates? Who shrinks? Who tells a lie? Who tells the truth but wishes they hadn't? They are reading the room with a level of precision that the loudest person in that space couldn't dream of, because the loudest person is too busy being heard to observe anything at all. This is the first reason silent people are dangerous. They see everything. Psychologists call this environmental scanning. It's the ability to absorb information from a social environment at a high rate. And here's the key insight. You cannot be both a transmitter and a receiver at the same time. When you are transmitting, you are outputting. And while you output, your ability to receive, to observe, to notice, to pick up on subtle cues drops dramatically. Silent people are almost always in receive mode. They notice the slight hesitation before someone answers a question. They notice when your smile doesn't reach your eyes. They notice the shift in someone's posture when a certain topic comes up. They notice the micro-expressions, those brief flickers of emotion that cross a human face in less than a fifth of a second that most people are too distracted to catch. And here is what makes this dangerous. Information is power. Always has been, always will be. And while you were busy talking, while you were busy performing, while you were busy filling the room with sound, the quiet person in the corner just gathered more information about the people in that room than anyone else present. They know who the real decision maker is in your organization, not because they were told, but because they watched who people looked at before they spoke. They know what makes you insecure, not because you said it, but because they noticed the 3 topics that made you over-explain yourself. They know when you're lying, not because they confronted you, but because they noticed you changed the subject slightly too fast. Never mistake the quiet person for an uninformed one. They are frequently the most informed person in the room. You spoke, they listened, and now they know far more about you than you know about them. That asymmetry, that imbalance of information is what makes a silent person genuinely, profoundly dangerous. Reason 2. They think before they move. There's a concept in chess called tempo. Tempo refers to the pace of play, the speed at which each side moves. And amateur chess players almost always have a tempo problem. They see a move and they make it, immediately, reactively, because the move seems good right now, because it feels right, because they are responding to what's in front of them. Advanced chess players are different. They slow down. They look past the immediate move to the consequence of the move, then to the consequence of that consequence, then further still. They are not playing the board as it is. They are playing the board as it will be 3, 5, 10 moves from now. Silent people do this in real life. When most people are provoked, they react. When someone offends them, they respond immediately, emotionally, impulsively, often in ways they'll regret. When an opportunity appears, they rush toward it without asking whether it's the right opportunity or simply a shiny distraction. But silent people sit with things. They feel the anger, but they don't act on it right away. They see the opportunity, but they don't reach for it immediately. They hear the insult, but they don't return fire in the moment. Instead, they think. They ask, what is really happening here? What does this person want from me? What are the possible outcomes of each response I could give? What would I be giving away if I react right now? What do I stand to gain by waiting? The late, legendary investor Charlie Munger, who worked alongside Warren Buffett for decades, had a rule: never respond to an important question or decision the same day it's raised. He believed that time, even just a night's sleep, changed the quality of decisions radically. He was a famously quiet man. He said at Berkshire Hathaway meetings that the best thing he did all year was sit next to Warren Buffett and keep his mouth shut until he had something truly worth saying. In a world of reactive people, the person who takes their time is extraordinary. In a world of impulsive decisions, the person who pauses is playing a different game entirely. And here is what that means for you, if you're dealing with one. You cannot read them. You don't know what they're planning. You can't predict their next move, because they haven't made it yet, and when they do, it will be measured, intentional, and precisely calibrated for maximum effect. That unpredictability, born not from chaos but from patience and deep thinking, is what makes a silent person's next move so powerful. They didn't just react, they decided. And there is nothing more dangerous in any arena of life than a person who acts by decision rather than by impulse. Reason 3. They never show their hand. In poker, there is a term, the tell. A tell is an unconscious behavior, a tick, a glance, a shift in breathing that reveals what cards you're holding. Great poker players are not just good at reading cards, they're extraordinarily good at hiding themselves, at giving nothing away, at maintaining what players call a poker face. And here's the thing about poker. The whole game is about incomplete information. Nobody can see your hand. The winner is almost never determined by who has the best cards. The winner is determined by who controls information the best, who reveals the least, who makes others believe things that aren't true, who uses silence and stillness as a weapon. Silent people live their entire lives this way. They rarely volunteer information. They don't tell you their plans before they execute them. They don't broadcast their goals, their strategies, their frustrations, their dreams. They share selectively, carefully, almost surgically, only what serves their purpose, only when the timing is right. This is maddening to the people around them, and it is deeply strategically powerful. When you don't know what someone wants, you can't outmaneuver them. When you don't know what they're thinking, you can't manipulate them. When you can't read their emotional state, you can't calibrate your approach. You are operating blind. Meanwhile, they have usually figured out exactly what you want. They have read your signals, your tells, your patterns, and they hold their own cards invisibly, perfectly, until the moment they choose to act. Think about the most successful negotiators in history. Whether in business, diplomacy, or warfare, the most effective ones share a common trait. They reveal the minimum necessary. They let the other side talk first. They use silence as pressure. They give nothing away about their bottom line, their walkaway point, their desperation, or their lack of it. Abraham Lincoln's Secretary of State, William Seward, reportedly said of Lincoln, "He keeps his own counsel. You never know what he thinks until he has decided to act. And by then, you realize he has been 12 steps ahead of everyone the entire time." Think about that. 12 steps ahead. Not because he was smarter than everyone, but because he shared nothing until he was ready. When you talk too much, you negotiate against yourself. You reveal what you value. You reveal your anxieties. You reveal your red lines. You hand the other person a map of exactly how to outplay you. Silent people never hand you that map. And that makes them, in every negotiation, every conflict, every relationship, the one holding the power. Reason 4. Their words actually mean something. Here is a question I want you to sit with for a moment. When the loudest person you know speaks, how much weight do their words carry? Be honest. When someone talks constantly, when they fill every silence, narrate every thought, have an opinion on everything, after a while, their words start to blur. They become background noise. You stop truly listening because you've learned from experience that most of what they say doesn't need to be retained. It's just sound, just the verbal equivalent of white noise. Now think about the quietest person you deeply respect. When they speak, when they finally say something, how do you react? You stop. You lean in. You pay attention because you know, you've learned, that when this person chooses to use words, those words have been chosen carefully. Those words represent a considered position, not a knee-jerk reaction. Those words mean something. This is one of the most underestimated powers of silence. Silence builds credibility. It creates weight. It establishes in the minds of the people around you that your words are a precious and rare resource, and that when you spend them wisely. There is a concept in economics called scarcity value. Things that are rare are valuable. Things that are abundant are cheap. Apply that to language. Words are cheap when they are infinite. When someone gives you an opinion on everything, their opinions are worth very little. When someone only speaks when they've reached a conclusion, when they've genuinely thought it through, their opinions carry extraordinary weight. And here is how this plays out in real life. In a meeting, who holds more authority? The person who has been talking for the last 40 minutes, often repeating the same points in different words, or the person who has said almost nothing, who has sat quietly, absorbed everything, and then says, with complete calmness, "I think the real problem we haven't addressed yet is this." Every head in that room will turn. Because silence, when broken thoughtfully, is more powerful than an hour of speaking. Nelson Mandela was famously known for this. Those who worked with him described his meetings as extraordinary. He would sit for extended periods, listening, seemingly absorbed, giving almost no verbal feedback. Then, when he finally spoke, the room fell completely silent, not out of obligation, out of genuine anticipation. Because in 27 years of imprisonment, Nelson Mandela had learned that words were a resource, and he spent them with extraordinary deliberation. The silence of a great person is not absence, it is preparation. And when a truly silent person finally speaks, you would do well to listen with everything you have. Reason 5. They are immune to manipulation. Think about how most manipulation works. It works by triggering an emotional reaction fast enough that the target doesn't have time to think. Flattery is manipulation. It triggers your need for validation and makes you compliant before you realize what's happening. Urgency is manipulation. Act now or lose this forever is designed to bypass your rational brain by triggering fear. Guilt is manipulation. Public shaming is manipulation. Even excessive enthusiasm can be manipulation, designed to sweep you up in excitement before you've assessed whether the excitement is warranted. All of these tactics have something in common. They require speed. They work best when the target reacts immediately, emotionally, without pausing to think. Silent people are almost entirely immune to these tactics. Not because they are emotionless, they feel everything, but because their default setting is to pause before they respond. And that pause, that brief interval between stimulus and response, is exactly where manipulation goes to die. Because silence, when broken thoughtfully, is more powerful than an hour of speaking. Nelson Mandela was famously known for this. Those who worked with him described his meetings as extraordinary. He would sit for extended periods, listening, seemingly absorbed, giving almost no verbal feedback. Then, when he finally spoke, the room fell completely silent, not out of obligation, out of genuine anticipation. Because in 27 years of imprisonment, Nelson Mandela had learned that words were a resource, and he spent them with extraordinary deliberation. The silence of a great person is not absence, it is preparation. And when a truly silent person finally speaks, you would do well to listen with everything you have. Reason 5. They are immune to manipulation. Think about how most manipulation works. It works by triggering an emotional reaction fast enough that the target doesn't have time to think. Flattery is manipulation. It triggers your need for validation and makes you compliant before you realize what's happening. Urgency is manipulation. Act now or lose this forever is designed to bypass your rational brain by triggering fear. Guilt is manipulation. Public shaming is manipulation. Even excessive enthusiasm can be manipulation, designed to sweep you up in excitement before you've assessed whether the excitement is warranted. All of these tactics have something in common. They require speed. They work best when the target reacts immediately, emotionally, without pausing to think. Silent people are almost entirely immune to these tactics. Not because they are emotionless, they feel everything, but because their default setting is to pause before they respond. And that pause, that brief interval between stimulus and response, is exactly where manipulation goes to die. When someone flatters a silent person, they don't glow and immediately comply. They take it in, consider it, and ask themselves, what does this person want from me? What is the function of this compliment? When someone creates artificial urgency with a silent person, it doesn't accelerate their timeline, it actually slows them down. Because they recognize urgency as a pressure tactic, and pressure tactics make them suspicious, not compliant. When someone tries to guilt a silent person, it doesn't spiral into shame and capitulation. It gets filed away as a data point. This person uses guilt as a tool. Noted. Adjust behavior accordingly. Viktor Frankl, the legendary psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor, wrote one of the most important ideas in the history of human psychology. He said, "Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom." Silent people live in that space. They have mastered it. They have expanded it into a deliberate, cultivated territory that most people don't even know exists. And the result is a person who cannot easily be pushed, pulled, panicked, guilted, flattered, or rushed into a decision that doesn't serve them. In a world full of people who are constantly being emotionally manipulated by advertising, by social media, by the people around them, the person who has mastered the pause is operating at a genuinely different level. They are not unfeeling. They feel deeply, but they choose when and how to act on those feelings. That self-mastery is, in every meaningful sense of the word, dangerous. Reason 6. Silence is their armor. When most people are attacked, criticized, insulted, challenged, dismissed, they defend themselves. They justify, explain, argue, get angry, get hurt, get loud. They pour energy and emotion into a response designed to protect their reputation, restore their dignity, prove the other person wrong. And in doing so, they reveal something critical. They reveal that the attack landed. They reveal that the other person has power over their emotional state. They reveal the crack in their armor, and in revealing it, they invite more attacks through that same crack. Silent people respond to attacks very differently. They say nothing, or very close to it, and this is one of the most powerful things a human being can do. There is an ancient Stoic principle that says, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. The Stoics understood 2,000 years ago what neuroscience now confirms. Our emotional reactions are choices. Not always easy choices, not always instinctive, but choices nonetheless. When you are insulted and you don't react, something remarkable happens. The person who insulted you loses power, because they attacked expecting a reaction, expecting to shake you, to hurt you, to draw you into their frame, into their game. When that reaction doesn't come, they are disoriented. They don't know what to do next. And the longer the silence stretches, the more uncomfortable they become. In the film No Country for Old Men, the villain, Anton Chigurh, uses silence as pure psychological terror. He barely speaks, and his silence is more menacing than any threat could ever be, because silence forces people to fill in the blanks with their own fears. It gives them nothing to grab onto, nothing to argue with, nothing to push back against. That principle applies in everyday life too. The person who responds to criticism with silence is not agreeing. They are not conceding. They are refusing to be drawn in. They are taking the power of the interaction back. They are saying without words, your attempt to disturb me has failed. And over time, people stop trying to disturb them because they've learned. This person cannot be rattled. This person cannot be shaken. This person does not fight with you on your terms. And fighting someone on their terms, on terms they've chosen, in a game they've designed, is always going to be a losing proposition. Silence as armor is not passive. It is a deeply active, deeply disciplined, deeply powerful defense mechanism. And in a world that is constantly trying to provoke you into reactions that don't serve you, it is one of the most valuable things a person can cultivate. Reason 7. They play the long game. There is a difference between winning a battle and winning a war. Most people are wired for the battle, for the immediate win, for the quick gratification of being right, being seen, getting what they want right now. We live in a culture of instant everything, instant information, instant communication, instant results. Our brains have been conditioned to expect speed, and that conditioning has made most people extraordinarily bad at patience. Silent people are, almost without exception, extraordinarily patient. Because patience requires silence. It requires sitting with discomfort. It requires watching an opportunity pass, knowing that a better one is coming. It requires watching someone disrespect you and choosing not to respond, not because you can't, but because the timing isn't right, and you're playing a longer game. This shows up everywhere. In business, the silent entrepreneur who doesn't launch when everyone else does, who takes another year to get it right, and then enters the market with a product so refined it's almost unfair. The loud ones who rushed to market first are scrambling. The silent one who waited is winning. In relationships, the person who sees warning signs early but doesn't react immediately, who watches, who waits, who at precisely the right moment makes a decision so clean and clear that it changes everything, because it was made from certainty, not panic. In conflict, the person who does not retaliate immediately, who absorbs the provocation, files it away, waits for the right circumstance, and then responds with something so measured and so precise that the other person never sees it coming. There is a Japanese principle called kaizen, continuous, patient, incremental improvement. The idea that small, consistent steps compounded over time produce results that are extraordinary. This philosophy is silent by nature. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't broadcast. It just keeps working, keeps improving, keeps building until the results are undeniable. Silent people live this way. They don't need you to know about their progress. They don't post about their goals. They don't seek external validation to stay motivated. They have something rarer and more powerful, an internal compass, a quiet, steady drive that doesn't require applause. And here is what the long game looks like to everyone else. It looks like nothing. For a long time, it looks like nothing is happening. The loud people are moving, the loud people are making noise, the loud people are being seen. And then one day, not dramatically, not loudly, the silent person arrives somewhere. And everyone who dismissed them, everyone who overlooked them, everyone who assumed they weren't doing anything because they weren't saying anything, looks up in complete surprise. The quiet ones always surprise you. Not because they got lucky, but because they were always 10 steps ahead. Reason 8. Silence is a form of emotional intelligence. In the early 1990s, psychologists Peter Salovey and John Mayer introduced a concept that would reshape how we think about human intelligence, emotional intelligence. The idea that the ability to understand, manage, and navigate emotions, your own and others, was a form of intelligence distinct from and arguably more important than raw cognitive ability. Emotional intelligence has 4 core components: the ability to perceive emotions accurately, the ability to use emotions to facilitate thought, the ability to understand complex emotional dynamics, and the ability to manage emotions effectively in yourself and others. Silence is deeply connected to all 4. To perceive emotions accurately, you need to stop talking long enough to actually observe what the other person is feeling. You need to watch, to listen, to pick up on tone, body language, the pause before an answer. Silence creates the space in which emotional perception becomes possible. To use emotions to facilitate thought, you need to be able to separate your immediate emotional reaction from your deliberate response. The silent person who pauses before reacting is doing exactly this. They feel the emotion, acknowledge it, and then ask, how can I use this feeling to inform a better decision? Not, how quickly can I express this feeling? To understand complex emotional dynamics, to see how people affect each other, how dynamics shift, who has power and who wants it, you need the bird's eye view that only silence and observation can provide. And to manage emotions effectively, the most fundamental skill is what psychologists call affect regulation, the ability to modulate your emotional state. Not suppress it, modulate it. Choose how much of it you express, when, and how. Silent people are, at their core, masters of affect regulation. This is why they are so unnerving to be around sometimes. Most of us read emotional state as a real-time display. We can see how someone is feeling by watching their face, hearing their voice, observing their behavior. With a silent person, that display is controlled, curated, and the uncertainty about what they're actually feeling, combined with the certainty that they feel more than they show, creates an unsettling sense of depth. There is someone in there, you know it, but you cannot see it. And what you cannot see, you cannot predict. That emotional opacity, that regulation, that depth, it is not coldness, it is not indifference, it is intelligence, emotional intelligence at its most refined. And it is genuinely dangerous. Reason 9. They build influence without seeking it. There is a paradox at the heart of influence. The people who most aggressively seek influence, attention, and authority are often the ones who achieve it least sustainably. The loud voice that demands respect rarely earns it. The leader who talks the most in a room is rarely the most respected one in it. The person who constantly performs, constantly signals their value, their status, their superiority is advertising, not demonstrating. And advertising, as we all know, creates awareness, not trust. Trust is built differently. Trust is built through consistency, through reliability, through a track record of doing what you say, being where you said you'd be, saying what you believe even when it's uncomfortable. Silent people build trust naturally, almost automatically, because they don't perform. What you see, which is very little, is what they are. There's no gap between their presentation and their reality because they don't have a presentation. They have a self. And people sense this. Without being able to articulate it, people feel more comfortable around individuals who are transparent and authentic, even if that authenticity is quiet and hard to read, because they know that what they're seeing is real. There's no angle, no performance, no manipulation. This authenticity builds influence over time in a very specific way. People begin to seek out the silent person's opinion, not because the silent person demanded it, but because they've learned through accumulated experience that when this person has something to say, it's worth hearing. When this person recommends something, it's genuine. When this person says, "I trust this," or "I don't trust this," they mean it. And their track record of judgment is excellent. This is what is sometimes called earned authority. Not positional authority, not the authority that comes from a title or a status symbol or a loud declaration, but earned authority, the authority that accumulates through demonstrated wisdom, consistency, and integrity. And here's the extraordinary part. The silent person never chased it. They never campaigned for it. They never asked to be the person whose opinion matters. They simply were themselves, observed carefully, thought deeply, acted deliberately, and the influence found them. In the long run, that kind of influence is far more powerful and far more durable than anything a loud, self-promotional person will ever build. Because it wasn't given, it was earned. And what is earned cannot be taken away. Reason 10. They know themselves. We have saved the most important for last. In a world of infinite noise, news feeds and notifications and music in our ears and screens in our hands from the moment we wake to the moment we sleep, there is one thing that has become genuinely rare. Solitude. Real solitude. The kind where you're alone with your thoughts and you don't immediately reach for your phone to fill the silence. The kind where you sit with discomfort instead of numbing it. The kind where you actually genuinely get to know yourself, your values, your fears, your patterns, your desires, your non-negotiables. Most people are strangers to themselves, not because they're unintelligent or unaware, but because they've never given themselves the silence in which self-knowledge becomes possible. They've been so busy reacting to the external world, so caught up in other people's opinions, other people's narratives, other people's noise, that they've lost contact with their own inner compass. Silent people have not lost that contact. In fact, for many of them, silence isn't just a social behavior, it's a practice, a discipline, a way of returning regularly to the still, clear pool of their own interior. And from that pool, they draw something that most people desperately want and almost never find. Certainty. Not arrogance, not rigidity, not the false certainty of someone who refuses to consider other viewpoints, but the deep, settled certainty that comes from knowing who you are at your core, what you stand for, what you will and won't compromise on, what actually matters to you versus what other people tell you should matter. This certainty is visible even when a person says nothing. You can feel it in the way they carry themselves, in the steadiness of their gaze, in the way they respond or don't respond to pressure, in the way they make decisions without agonizing over them, in the way they can say no without apologizing and yes without over-explaining. There is nothing more powerful in a human being than that kind of self-possession. Aristotle said, "Knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom." And in the 24 centuries since he said it, nothing has changed. Self-knowledge is the root of every other form of power, wisdom, and capability. Silent people have it. Not perfectly, not completely, no one does, but in far greater measure than those who have filled every quiet moment with noise and never once sat with themselves long enough to ask, "Who am I really? What do I actually want? What do I genuinely believe?" A person who knows themselves cannot be redefined by others. They cannot be talked out of their values or panicked out of their priorities. They cannot be destabilized by insults because they have a settled understanding of who they are that does not depend on external validation. They cannot be manipulated because they know their own desires too clearly to be tricked by false promises. They cannot be rushed because they know where they're going and they trust their pace. This is the deepest, most fundamental reason why silent people are dangerous. They know themselves, and a person who truly knows themselves is free in a way that most people will never experience. Free from other people's opinions, free from the need for approval, free from the anxiety of not knowing what they want, free from the manipulation of anyone who tries to create that need in them. Free. And a free person, a truly free person, is the most powerful kind of person who exists. So, we've covered 10 reasons why the quietest people in your life are often the most extraordinary ones. They see everything, they think before they move, they never show their hand, their words carry weight, they cannot be manipulated, they use silence as armor. They play the long game, they understand emotions deeply, they build real influence, and they know themselves. Now, I want to leave you with something. Because this video isn't just about understanding the people around you, it's about asking yourself a question. How much of your own power have you been giving away by speaking too much? How many negotiations have you lost because you filled the silence? How many relationships have been unbalanced because you revealed more than you received? How many times have you reacted when you should have paused, spoken when you should have listened, broadcast when you should have absorbed? Silence is not just a personality trait, it is a skill, and like any skill, it can be learned. You don't need to become a different person, you don't need to stop talking entirely, you don't need to perform stoicism or manufacture mystery. You just need to practice the pause. Before you respond, pause. Before you reveal, ask yourself if this information serves you to share. Before you react, breathe. And in the quiet spaces between your words, begin to listen to others, and most importantly, to yourself. Because the most powerful version of you is not necessarily the loudest one. It might be the stillest. It might be the most silent. If this video challenged something in you, if it made you look at someone in your life differently or look at yourself differently, that's the point. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment with which of these 10 reasons hit you hardest. And if you're not subscribed yet, do it now, because we make content like this regularly. Deep, honest psychological breakdowns of the things no one talks about. Until next time, stay quiet, stay sharp.